Did. Okay, so before we look at the video, I meant to pull up the email you sent me, but basically his background was your horse's name is Stitch, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Like Lilo and Stitch, I presume. Yeah.
I love it. Um,
Yeah.
and he had had a little bit of a history with biting, but
Yes.
not really aggressive.
No, not really aggressive. No, just more nibbles, and builds up as his anxiety builds up.
Okay. And then what do
Yeah.
you feel the main issues are? I know I looked at the first video and sent you an email, and then you started the lunging we're going to look at today. But where do
Yeah.
you feel like what does your gut
I
tell you between you and him? What's going on?
It's like I annoy him a little bit. It's like I feel like I frustrate him a little bit. And I don't know whether part of it is a little bit of anxiety from him, maybe through pain, I don't know, or I'm at the bottom of the pecking order and he's saying bugger off, or I'm not sure. Not sure
Okay.
really. We've gone around in lots of circles.
And when I look at his movement, we'll look at it closer on the lunge line. He's not comfortable in his movement. Like that's kind of
Right.
obvious from the posture he holds. The way I look at pain issues very specifically, especially in rehab, and the part of the groundwork, or not groundwork, the basic handling workbook in the theory section, where I talk about the
Uh-huh.
learning frame of mind and being dominant in the parasympathetic nervous system, that to
Yeah.
me is always sort of a beacon about pain.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
it's not easy to change coordination. And his coordination has been primarily in what's called the posture of extension. So whatever riding he had, we'll look at that on the video, but he hasn't
Uh-huh.
fully re-engaged his hindquarter. He's still kind of tight through the
No.
back and pushing the spine down more often than he's either in neutral or lifting it. And so he gets a bit
Uh-huh.
tight through the neck. So that
Uh-huh.
posture horses only choose it for two reasons. One is fear, and two is instability. And in his case, I think it's instability. And
Uh-huh.
if over time, if his behavior has become less snarky, less sour, less pushy, but it's still
Uh-huh.
there, then I would say you have more of a physical issue than you have a relationship issue. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Because I
Yes.
don't see
Yeah.
him in a high level of fear. I think his
No, he's
kind of
not.
crankiness is not
Uh-huh.
necessarily pain, but it's definitely discomfort.
Uh-huh.
So when I have a
Yeah.
pain issue, and especially there's been pain issues I've dealt with that were hard to diagnose. The vets looked at them a million times, couldn't find anything wrong. But the way I recognize a genuine pain issue is when that defensiveness gets worse, not better. So
Yeah.
if it's gotten better over time, but it's kind of plateaued, then I wouldn't say it's a physical pain issue. Because usually, if it's physical pain, it's going to they'll get steadily and steadily more defensive and they'll start escalating from
Uh-huh.
mild to moderate to extreme. And if he's gone
Uh-huh.
from extreme to moderate to mild, then I would just want to give you ease of mind that
Okay.
if he complains about working,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that he's in pain.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because without ruling that out or without knowing
Uh-huh.
how to recognize it, when it lurks in the back of our minds, what the horses do is they'll sort of play on it. They'll go like, "Oh yeah, this is too hard. You can't push
It's
me
too
that
easy.
much. I'm
Yeah.
ooh, 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 it hurts." And I go at a certain point, just like us going to the gym or changing our body, there's going to be
Yeah.
discomfort in that process. There's going to be struggle in that process.
Uh-huh.
And so what
Uh-huh.
I'm always looking at is if I'm crossing the threshold, between physical discomfort and physical struggle into either a level of discomfort that creates fear or an actual pain
Yeah.
issue. I go, that's the
Yeah.
threshold that we can't cross because then it goes
Yes.
backwards.
Yes. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay. So the way
Uh-huh.
I see him, and we'll look at the video, is I just think he's mildly defensive, is how I would put it, trying to
Uh-huh.
let everybody know that what you're asking him to do is not easy for him or comfortable.
Uh-huh.
And you might find he gets a little bit more defensive as you tuck into the issue more directly. And I just want you to be confident that
Uh-huh.
you'll have little peaks and valleys, but the overall picture should always go towards calmness. Even if he
Yeah.
has a day or he has a random blow up or he voices his opinion, if it's
Uh-huh.
genuinely a pain issue, that will perpetuate. And if it's just sort of part of the learning process, it'll come and go pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
And it's important to know that because so many times is we evolve the balance of the horse. And this is kind of what we're going to look at with him because I suspect it's more of a physical discomfort. He just, as much as he's had time off and as gentle as you've been with him, the pattern of his previous dominant movement, should we say, like,
Uh-huh.
so I look at postures. There's really only three postures we're going to play with. One is extension, the other is long and low, and then we try to arrive at what I would call basic balance. And
Yeah.
so in the posture of extension, which is what his muscle development and movement tells me he spent the most time in that posture, right?
Yeah.
So long and low would be the next step, but long
Uh-huh.
and low in a dynamic way where he's voluntarily lengthening the top line
Uh-huh.
because that comes from changing the spinal functions and improving the engagement and stability of the hindquarter. So if he's not
Yeah.
choosing to lengthen the neck, then he's not there yet.
Okay.
Does that
Okay.
make sense? And that's what I mean by
Yes.
a posture change. It's a voluntary, spontaneous, overall change of use through the body that's directed by
Uh-huh.
changes in the spinal functions.
Yeah. Okay. And they need to do it themselves, not forced into some frame to go down.
Definitely not a frame because they just learn how to kind of work around that. But
Uh-huh.
even when we use aids to teach the horse to put the head down or go into long and low, even if
Yeah,
we're
sorry, that's what
using,
I meant.
yeah,
Yeah.
aids or rein pressure, it's like we're bypassing the process so we don't necessarily achieve the real reason we want the neck long and that posture of long and low. So
Yeah,
we
okay.
get it
Yeah.
to look like it, but we don't realize we're missing the reason we wanted it.
Yeah. Okay.
And and it
Uh-huh.
doesn't work in reverse. That's always, the whole horse industry will say, put the head and neck here, and then your horse will engage, and then your horse will use the back. And it just doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work that way. It just doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
backwards.
Yep.
So this looks like a 3-minute video. Let me try to get us
Mm-hmm.
out of the way. And so tell me about the lunging while we're looking at the video, how you think
Uh-huh.
it went.
He's always, so I haven't lunged him for probably about, I want to say a year or more. And the
Oh,
reason being is, so I haven't been riding now for about a year and a half. Um, and when I was previously lunging him, maybe I was probably putting a bit too much pressure on him and whatnot, but you'll notice when we go around to the right, he always does it on this side. He gets a bit snaky and sometimes threatens a little bit. And I've always thought, is he trying to tell me that he's in too much pain and he's not coping with it? So I've stopped.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what I want to help you sort of navigate so you can be confident because
Yeah.
when I look at his body, there's as much as you have
Mm-hmm.
not been riding him and you've really let him guide you in the groundwork, which I think is fantastic, 4 stars, and that's why he looks as good as he does, is because you really slowed
Mm-hmm.
down and listened to him. And so when I look at his muscling, he's quite supple through the muscles. And the residual, the little bit of sort of crest here on the neck is really
Mm-hmm.
a tightness. A lot of people will say it's that he's too fat. And I go, it's not usually a weight issue, although they can put weight on there. He's been pulling
Mm-hmm.
his neck up and back. And so that sort of
Yes.
tight, cresty muscle here, combined with this little bit of a almost like a dip in the mane before the withers.
Yes.
So it
Yep.
goes withers down up to the mane instead of sort of a straight line out of the withers.
Yeah. Yep. I
That
can see that.
is it's very, very mild, but that tells me about his past history. And
Mm-hmm.
the time off you've given him, it's probably less pronounced than it was at one time. But
Yeah. Yeah. When I
that
first,
go ahead.
oh, sorry. Oh, I was going to say when I first bought him, I didn't realise at the time, but they rode him very much behind the bit or behind the vertical, and he was all tucked up like this. And he'd either be like that or he'd be really forward.
Yeah,
Nothing in between. So I
that's
think that's probably,
that's
yeah.
exactly the pattern I'm seeing in his body that is so what happens when we have time off, anytime the body goes into compensation patterns, has an injury, an accident, a surgery, the body instantly sets up sort of a compensation pattern that's like a detour in the nervous system. And if we don't go back in and actively retrain the coordination, then it stays there. And so what you've given him is time off, very gentle work. He's been able to figure out, I would say 50% of getting himself out of between the two of you, however you did it. He's
Yeah.
50% of the way out of his old habit, but not quite yet because it's like he's still holding some tightness through the back muscles, the little bit of
Mm-hmm.
flatness through the croup, and then the sort of straightness through the hocks,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you want to
Mm-hmm.
watch, it's good that you weren't riding him because the way he's using his legs, it makes him more prone to suspensory strains. And that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the downsides of being ridden like you were describing. That's exactly what I see in his body. So I'm not surprised
Mm-hmm.
to hear that was kind of how he was ridden. So when he
Yeah.
moves, if you look at the top of the pelvis, do you see how there's a rocking effect side to side? So you can sort of see the midline from the inside of your lunging circle. His pelvis sort of tilts towards you and away.
Oh, yes.
You see that?
Yeah. Like he's shaking his, I think. Yep.
Yeah. And so it should just be a straight pump up and down without the
Yep.
hindquarter sort of tilting side to side.
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's the disengagement. And then when he goes to trot, you sort of see the wobble a little bit side to side increase, right?
Yes.
Then it gets better. Like when he gets his nose that low, the hindquarter
Yep.
quits tilting.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you see how it still wobbles a bit? Like he needs to work on engagement, but
Yep.
only when he puts his nose this low is that correlating to the back and the pelvis becoming more level and stable. Instead of when he shortens his neck, you're going to see more rolling of the barrel and sort of
Yep.
tilting of the pelvis left to right.
Yep.
When his nose goes down, and if you were riding him, when he puts his neck up like he just did, then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to feel it. The trot and the walk get very unstable, hard to ride. When he
Yes.
lengthens
Yep.
his neck like this and puts his nose, so there where he shortens his neck, the back is
Yep.
tightening and the hindquarters wobbling and disengaging a little. So he's
Yep.
changing posture as he's going.
Mm-hmm.
That's the version of long and low that he's choosing right there, where he's got his hindquarters minimally engaged, minimally
Yep.
stabilized, and he
Yep.
stabilized the alignment of the spine as well as the rotation. Then when he
Right.
picks his head up like that, so as soon as he goes back into this posture,
Yep.
that's the spine pushing down more than it's coming up. So
Yep.
in long and low, the spine isn't really lifting. It's not a posture of balance. It's just the very
Mm-hmm.
end. It's no longer going down. It's starting to change the direction, the spine from down towards up, but it's not up
Mm-hmm.
more than a degree or a millimeter. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Okay.
But
Yep.
the muscles change. Hang on, let me play that again. So
Yep.
the muscles of the top line change from a shortening contraction that's associated with the spine pushing down. When his nose is
Mm-hmm.
literally in the sand, he's released the
Mm-hmm.
shortening contraction and
Yep.
he's found the length. When they
Yes.
really, when they lift the back correctly, they use a contraction, but it's a lengthening muscle contraction.
Yes.
So when the
Yep.
spine goes down, it's called concentric contraction. When they lift the back, it's called eccentric contraction.
Yep.
Long and low is neither one.
Okay. Yep.
So
Just in
lo-
the middle.
yeah, long and low is just a release of the shortening and a release of
Mm-hmm.
contraction in general,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So why do they release the contraction? They release the contraction because the hind legs are engaged just enough to control stability in forward motion, and
Yep.
the alignment of the spine, nose to tail, has become straight, and the rotation or twisting effect of the spine has stabilized. It's
Yep.
those three
Yep.
pieces together are what
Mm-hmm.
make him choose the posture of long and low.
Yep.
So,
Can I Can I check then? So going around is the ideal, well, the better case than what he's doing when he's swinging about, that his barrel kind of stays stabilized and it's not going like that,
yes,
and that his back end is the same. It's not swinging too much. So it's kind of
yes.
straight. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So internal straightness is why they shift from extension to long and low. And internal
Okay.
straightness is stabilizing the spinal alignment. So every vertebra
Yep.
is ideally in line with the next, not overly bent left or right. So
Yep.
when we increase lateral bending, a lot of times we throw them out of balance by bending the neck, over bending it left and right.
Mm-hmm.
The other function it's not talked about in our traditional horse world at all, but are you familiar with the function of rotation?
Not really, no.
Okay, because you had said you did some straightness training, but that was a little bit my issue with the straightness training is they're not talking about rotation. So in your
No.
body, if you twist your torso left and right like this,
Mm-hmm.
that's rotation. It's a twisting function of the spine. Whoops, hang on.
Yep.
As opposed to lateral bending, which is a sideways bending of the spine.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
those two functions are so intertwined that you can actually put your hand on his back where the saddle would go, and you feel if you bent his
Mm-hmm.
neck around to the right, like I used to do and they taught in natural horsemanship, I did way too much of it. what happens
Yeah,
is
yeah.
when you bend the neck to the, like say to the right, you'll feel your hand where the saddle goes, his barrel will roll over to the left. So his muscles will contract on the right
Right,
side of
okay.
his back, and the barrel will roll over to the
Yep,
outside. That's what they have to
yep.
do when we overbend them, or they would snap their spinal cord. It's like, it's not meant to work that way.
Yeah,
So
yep, yep.
if like where I froze this particular screen, if you look, you see
Mm-hmm.
how the right side of the hindquarter is higher
Yes,
and the left is
yes,
lower.
yep,
That's telling you the back
yep,
is doing the same. And
yep,
even though he looks straight and his neck is in the direction of getting longer,
yep,
that if like when we twist side to side, if you're a horse and you put that on a horizontal plane, it feels like
yep,
rolling. It's a
yeah, okay.
So rotation is a
As
twisting
opposed
function.
to, yes,
Yeah.
yep,
So when we do it, we twist left and right. When they
yep,
do it, it has the effect of rolling the barrel side to side
okay,
and tilting. So you have a high croup on the right side, low on the left, or vice versa.
yep,
Okay. They can do that to the outside of a turn. They can overdo it to the inside of a turn. And most interesting, this is probably what he needs the most help recovering from. When the spine pushes down, the side effect of dropping the back is not only disengaging the hindquarters, but it creates hyperrotation. So
right,
when I ride a horse, the way I know that the back is pushing down is because the horse shakes the saddle or rolls the saddle left to right rapidly.
yep,
That's how you
yep,
know, right?
okay,
And so, like in this case, if you were in the saddle, if this was his constant pattern of the dorsal tips of the spine rotating to the left, that's going to tighten the right side of his back and it's going to
yep,
restrict the right hind leg. And in the saddle, your whole saddle would shift to the left. You would
mm-hmm,
feel like your left leg is longer, your right leg is shorter. You might need to tighten the girth because the whole saddle is gravitating off to the left.
yes,
That
yep,
we all experience that. Nobody tells us that's rotation. That's a problem
no,
in the spine.
right, okay, yep,
Does that make sense?
yep, yep. So in the perfect world, his both sides of his rump would be even when he's going around,
They would pump up and down alternately. They would pump
but like
like
at the same,
this,
yep,
but you wouldn't see the two halves of the pelvis shift sidewards like this, or
okay,
sort of like get high and low with this whole movement of the pelvis.
okay,
So if you walk him,
yep,
like if you want to watch him, what you can do is put a few strips of tape on his butt, either side of the tail,
yep,
and just mark out, like just put a little 6-inch strip of tape, or maybe two or three of them along the top of the hindquarters, either side of the spine, and have
yep,
somebody walk him away from you on a straight line,
yeah,
and then have
yep,
somebody walk him towards you. But while he's going away from you, the tape helps you see what the hindquarters are doing.
yeah, okay, yep,
Does that make sense? Or
yes,
if you put a saddle on him, the saddle is going to show you also what the back is doing. So if the saddle is tilting or
mm-hmm,
shaking side to side, that tells
mm-hmm,
you he's not stable in the function of rotation.
okay, yep,
Yeah.
yep. So, and when I put the strips on, just put them like that
Yeah.
over his rump. Okay,
Just so
yep,
you can kind of see a comparison. It gives us a visual comparison left to right to develop
yep,
your eye. And then
yep,
if you watch him more on a circle, like even on the lunging, if like what right now we would see the strip of tape here, but we wouldn't see the outside at all, right? So
No.
now if we play it a little bit, you see there, even when the right hind leg is back, you can't see
Mm-hmm.
the opposite side of the pelvis.
It's really twisting it, isn't it? Like
Hmm.
that.
And what that's going to
Yeah.
do is that instability um, through the midline, through the spine, is what's making his
Mm-hmm.
legs sort of straight. So
Yeah, okay.
I don't think he has any hock issues, but he's functionally too straight through the hocks,
Yeah.
right? And so the reason he's a little uncomfortable with engagement and even the muscle development here, like this little bump here, is
Yeah, he's got a funny little bump there.
that's an overdeveloped gluteal muscle.
Right.
So where his hindquarter looks he's pretty round, like you've really let his body relax. And so I'm being super picky when I point these things out because they're just the
No, that's
details.
good.
Yeah, and they're just the details
Yep.
that show his nervous system hasn't adopted a new habit all the way,
No. No.
right? So his nervous
Yep.
system, he's not stable enough in the hindquarters and through the straightness and the rotation to
Mm-hmm.
move consistently in long and low. But when you stick him on the lunge line at the trot, when he puts his nose in the ground, notice his hocks bend more. His butt levels
Oh, yeah,
off.
yeah.
You see
Yeah.
that? He's fixing
Yep.
himself in that posture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so anything we do together that he can be in that posture for more strides
Mm-hmm.
and in this posture for less strides. Like now watch the hocks straighten out, the butt starts tilting. You can even see it
Yeah.
through his tail head, right? Like his
Yep.
hindquarters look Arabian like. His tail set is high and his croup is a bit flat, and he's not an
Yes.
Arabian. That's
It's got
posture.
Arab in him, but
Oh, does
yeah.
he?
Well, his dad was half quarter horse, half Arab, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, who knows? But
Okay.
yeah, could be. Yep.
So the challenge with Arabs is they're born in the posture of extension and you ride them their whole life in extension and they never break down. And that's actually a problem for them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that sort of wiggly side to side of the tail head, of the
Yeah.
hindquarters, of the back,
Yep.
that makes for a bumpy ride and it's not supposed to be like that. So there where he shortened his neck and elevated the head in order to make a downward transition, it just
Yep.
tells you he doesn't have the stability to brake and literally like brakes in your car to slow himself down within the forward motion using his
Yep.
hindquarter, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
transitions are going to be the key for him.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I would do, looking at him going to the left, is like when I see the whip lifting, I'm not entirely sure if you're asking him to speed up within the motion or if you're about to ask for a transition. Which one are you like there
I
when you,
think I was asking him to move out the circle.
oh, okay, to go out farther.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the walk on the lunge line, the first thing I would do is let
Mm-hmm.
him walk for like 5 minutes. And if he falls in a lot, comes closer, right
Mm-hmm.
now, let him do it without a correction. That's just
Okay.
it's information. It just means he's leaning on the inside shoulder and see if he corrects it. So you're just gonna, pick up the lunge line so he doesn't put a leg over it. But
Yep. Yep.
in the first 5 minutes, let him walk and
Mm-hmm.
let him veer out and veer in. Because if he can regain
Okay.
if he can figure out some of his own internal straightness during the walk, he's going to make the circle bigger and straighter, more round, because it's more efficient. If he's
Okay.
if he's falling in all the time, that's information about him losing his balance left to right.
Mhm.
So he
Okay.
loses, like a loss of steering is a loss of straightness.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
kind
And
of,
obviously not step back, just just collect up the rope and then just let him out again as he goes.
yeah. And if he comes
Yeah.
close enough that you could sort of touch him with the tip of the whip, then that's a little bit too close. So you just touch him with the whip and say, hey, you don't get to run me over just because I'm letting you
Yeah,
come
because
in.
he's very bargy sometimes.
Yeah. So you might have
Yeah.
to just use the lunge whip to define the inner space,
Okay. Yep.
like a donut hole, but he
Yep.
can go anywhere between the donut hole and the end of the lunge line. And
Okay.
when you warm him up at the walk, don't use the whip unless he's coming into the center and kind of see what he does. See if he can straighten out his own circle. Because
Mhm.
if he can, he will also shift into long and low as he does it. And if he
Okay.
can't, that's part of
Yep.
what would make me move you on to the long reins rather than too
Okay.
much lunging.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's very
Yep.
important while he's walking that you only lift the whip if he halts.
If he
So
halts.
if he halts completely.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So don't ask him, let him choose his speed of the walk because
Uh-huh.
as he gets himself straighter, hopefully, he may
Uh-huh.
have to slow down quite a bit. He may choose to go
Uh-huh.
a little faster. We have no idea. So
Okay.
so you're going to let him adjust the speed of the walk
Uh-huh.
and you're going to let him figure out, see if he can find the most comfortable circle for him would be a big circle that stays
Mm-hmm.
relatively straight on the same length of lunge line. And he may,
Yep.
you could give him 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you can do whatever, but at
Yep.
least 5 minutes to see if he could figure out how to get himself more stable.
Okay.
And then after 5 minutes, ideally, if he could find this version, this deep version of long and low in the walk, it might be such a slow walk, it's almost halt,
Uh-huh.
which is
Yep.
fine because you want the posture change. The speed doesn't matter right now. It's wherever he could make
Okay.
the posture change. And
Yep.
if he can do this at the walk, then if you lift the whip behind the hind legs and take your time pushing him from walk to trot, he may,
Uh-huh.
if he can keep the neck long during the upward and downward transition, then you're actually building the pushing muscles.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Okay. If he shortens his
Yep.
neck during the transition, then, take more time during the transition. Like once you
Yep.
lift the whip, he's going to transition to trot, but you could give him
Uh-huh.
3 or 4 laps to get there. It doesn't have to be immediate.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Do you know what I mean? You
Right.
don't
So
have
nice.
to
Not yet.
rush.
Nice and gentle. Not yet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then
Yeah. Because the minute I
once,
rush, he just lift his head up.
exactly. So kind of the use and the timing of it is to encourage, could he get within this posture? Could he figure out how to get from walk to trot without shortening the neck? That's the
Okay.
question you're asking him to figure out. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yep.
so
Yep.
sometimes you push a little more, sometimes you push a little less, sometimes the transition takes 1 second, sometimes it takes 5 minutes. You just kind of adjust the timing. And then
Uh-huh.
once he's trotting, like when he goes into trot, it looks like he's choosing to maintain that you're not pushing him to maintain it. Is that true?
No, he was actually quite forward, maybe because it was the first time he was lunged in, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or something. Previously, he used to be a little bit hard to keep going, but maybe because I perhaps nagged him a little bit, and now I'm a little bit more cautious not to nag. So,
Yeah.
anywho, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully he's going to be a bit more.
And that's why, like in the ground, even the old version of the groundwork workbook, I called it playing the scales. So what's really
Mhm.
important on the lunge line, because when I learned it was maintain gait, maintain direction, don't make a mistake,
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah. And then I also learned you have to constantly push with the whip and you have to get a better speed in order. And all of that is just put it in the crap basket. It's
yeah,
useless, right?
yeah. Slows
And
him down, if anything, doesn't it?
yes, because in other words, what he was trained to do was to perform and do his tasks in a very bad posture. And so
Mm.
you pay the price for that, either with behavioral issues or lameness issues or both. That's not sustainable. So what I
Mhm.
look at is what can we do for him to choose the posture of long and low as soon as possible, hold it
Mhm.
for as many strides as possible, and make it his new habit of movement, right?
Mhm.
We need it in
Yeah.
walk, trot, canter, and both directions, right? But we're going to
Mhm.
start with where is it the easiest for him? And it looks like
Yeah.
trot to the right looks like the place to start with him. That, to
Yeah.
me, looks like his best possible use in this exercise so far. And I'm going to
Yeah.
let me get the next video up. This next video is just the other way.
Yes.
Okay, good, because
Yep.
I want to see how he goes. Yeah, I love that
It's
face.
funny because I thought this was his better way, but maybe not.
It kind of depends. Like it's
Yeah.
what he might have is what we call a left-handed horse is very common, right? We
Yes.
hear that all the
Yep.
time. What a
Yep.
left-handed horse is a horse with a chronic fixation of twist with the dorsal
Mhm.
side of the spine to the left. So
Yeah.
what that means is you get a restricted right hind leg, you get an overloaded left hind leg. So going
Mhm.
to the right, they're stiffer, but sometimes we think that's better because they're more stable. And going to the
Yeah.
left, they fall in a lot, and sometimes we think that's good because it's more supple. So
Yeah.
our point
Yeah.
of view of it is a little subjective.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, use the whip exactly like that if he comes within the
In
distance
my face.
where
Yeah.
you where if you can physically touch him with the whip, just lightly touch him to let him know there's a boundary there, that he can't come within the distance of the whip. But
Yep.
the reason he's not going out on the circle is because he's falling in. So
Yes.
there's two better strategies for correcting the falling in. One is, like I said, give him more time in the walk and see what he can
Mhm.
figure out on his own. The longer
Mhm.
he walks, the harder it is to make a small circle. So a lot of times they fix themselves. I go, knock yourself out
Yeah.
on the small circle, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The other way is whenever he veers or in and falls in, especially if he's in long and low, that's a great moment to ask for an upward transition. So as you
Okay.
increase, if you use the whip behind him to increase speed, it's also going to make him go back out on the circle.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So you get a twofer. Um,
Mhm.
so this direction, the trot doesn't look quite as smooth, and he's having a harder time getting his nose to the ground.
Mhm.
And did you ask for the canter or he chose it?
I asked for the canter.
Okay, that's good. So in the canter, the only way he can canter right now is with the neck short, right? Shortening
Mhm.
the neck up. So what that tells you is he doesn't have enough stability to add that much speed without
Mm-hmm.
dropping his back. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it doesn't mean you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
work with it because there's benefits to playing with canter. But what I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for is where is it the easiest for this horse to choose long and low, right?
Okay. Yep.
And as he slows his trot down, even though you're pushing him out with the whip, which is fine, he's not
Mm-hmm.
going back into extension in the trot like he did in the canter. So,
No. No.
so in the walk, he's quite a character.
He is.
Yeah. So in the walk, what's interesting is the walk to the right, he hardly would choose to lengthen the neck at all.
Mm-hmm.
The walk to the left, he wanted to lengthen his neck, even though he was falling in a bit more. He has
Yes.
more tendency to want length of the neck at the walk to the left than he does to the right.
Yep.
He
Yep.
went almost immediately into a very deep, long, and low trotting to the right, but he's kind of up, down with the neck use to the left at trot.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that that's normal?
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
Pretty,
sorry, for him, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he does. On when we go to the right, he would often put his neck down quite low. I thought it was a bad thing, didn't realize it was a good thing. Yeah, he'd often put his head down quite low. And then yeah, I thought he went better this way to the left,
hmm
but I suppose he's doing it there, isn't he? He's low
Yes, he
there.
did. So the trot looks like his easiest gait out of all three.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
So at the walk in both directions, he bounces between extension and long and low. And I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
postures,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So at the canter, I don't see it's not quite the same as long and low at the walk and trot, but
Mm-hmm.
the way he tosses the head and shortens the neck and struggles at canter, I would
Mm.
say if you work on canter, I would maybe do one transition each way per session, and that would be it. I would just kind of throw
Yep.
one in there.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I don't mind. Do you think it's worthwhile practicing that or just leaving canter out for now?
I would just leave canter out for now, and I'll tell you why, is mostly what I'm
Yeah.
seeing here in the hind legs. So
Yeah.
you have, if we watch the fetlocks here, right, because of that
Yeah.
straightness through the hock and the disengagement of the hindquarter, if
Yeah.
like the stifle, hock, and fetlock are all connected with the extensor and flexor tendons. And when they're not flexing the upper leg joints, when the pelvis isn't rotating around the hip joint for um, engagement, when it's sort of the
Yeah.
pelvis is rotating more backwards, which is disengagement, it has to
Yeah.
rotate forward to place the hind legs towards the center of the body. So if the
Mm-hmm.
pelvis isn't doing that, then you don't get enough flexion through the stifle and the hock joint and the last joint on the body to sort of take the brunt of all that lack of flexion up higher is the fetlock. And
Right. Okay.
and that's what can create a suspensory strain because
Yeah.
you have too much flexion through the fetlock joints. So let's just
Right. Yes.
take a quick look at that. What I mean by that is when he's in motion, do you see how the back of the fetlocks are almost hitting the ground?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
going to be
Like that.
yeah, that is probably what's creating discomfort and why he is so unhappy about either high speeds or being ridden because
Yeah. Okay.
you can have pain there long before you would ever have to call the vet. just like
Yeah.
us, we can feel carpal tunnel long before it turns into something that we have to go to the doctor or get surgery.
Yes.
So you see,
Yes.
even at the walk, that deep drop through the pastern and the fetlock,
Mm-hmm.
that will
Yep.
change. That will change as you change the use of the spine. And that will be
Okay.
one of the things is we're going to bring back the flexion into the hock and stifle, which will take that pressure off the fetlock
Yep.
and the suspensory apparatus. But
Okay. Yep.
it has to happen up here in the back and the hindquarter in order to change it through the legs,
Right. Yep. Yep.
right? So the
Yep.
most critical thing for his legs at this point is, however, we can get him in a posture of right now, I would say quite a deep, long and low version,
Mm-hmm.
not being ridden. And I think
Yep.
avoiding right now, avoiding high speeds, weight on his back, and even really tight turns,
Yes. Yep.
right? So a lunge line is safe. The long reins would be very safe. Um, and it looks like I would start with mostly letting him trot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
because if
With
you
with
go ahead.
oh, so I was going to say with the long reins. I haven't done it with him. I've done it with another horse before, but so basically, you literally just walk around the edges of the arena, going nice and straight. Is that correct?
Um, oh,
Or
I
should
might,
we leave long lining for now and cover that
well,
off another time?
no, what you can play with him is the ground driving version, which is from behind him, if you've done that
Yes.
before. What I
Yep.
was
Yep.
thinking of, I'd also teach it in a way that you use it like an outside rein on a lunge line. So,
Okay.
so there's a way, and so when you work on the long reins from the inside of the horse, you have an inside rein and an
Yep.
outside rein. You're actually
Yep.
affecting the function of rotation very directly. And
Yeah.
and when you walk behind him, like ground driving, you have
Mm-hmm.
equal reins like riding.
Mm-hmm.
But what you'll feel is if you don't use a surcingle and you don't run the reins through stirrups or anything to hold the reins up, the
Yep.
the tension on the reins when you walk behind him, maybe following the fence line, what you'll feel is they're not equal. That
Yeah. Okay.
that he shifts the tension. So like if we said 10 is a very heavy rein contact and 1 is a very slack, if you
Yep.
took up, say, a 4 rein contact, when you're walking
Yep.
behind him, if you match his speed, the reins will be really equal and even if he's straight. But what I
Yep.
suspect is that you're going to feel the tilting when you're walking behind him as a change in rein
Mm-hmm.
pressure left to right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that
Okay.
in the groundwork workbook you have,
Yep.
it's described very clearly, I think, in the first long rein exercise. It's a little kludgy. I didn't write it well. It's hard to understand, but I think I put the number values in there and explain
Yes.
how
Yep.
to work with the long reins without using anything on his back.
Yep. Okay.
Because you need that
Yep.
direct feel to your hands in order to feel the straightness that we're talking about.
Yep. Yep.
The,
And when you're feeling it at the beginning, am I trying to kind of correct anything or let him be doing his thing, just kind of following him in a straight line around the arena?
I would follow him first and
Mm-hmm.
try to get the feel for the long reins, um,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of see how he does with that.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry too much if your path of travel is perfectly straight. I would just sort of work on the long reins kind of like a channel or a corridor
Mm-hmm.
transmitting information back and forth. And so
Yeah.
basically, when we're on the long reins, our body becomes the path of travel, and the
Mm-hmm.
reins are keeping the horse's tail directly lined up with our center.
Yep. Okay.
And that way you can feel the long reins take a little bit of time to master because first you got to get the hang of the technique. But
Mm-hmm.
the benefit is you can feel the balance of the horse through the long reins better than any other groundwork exercise. And I think he's going to
Yeah.
need that before you ride him again. I think he's going to need some work on the long reins. But for
Mm-hmm.
now, I would say put him on a lunging program. Like if you want to take him for
Yep.
a little walk, if you want to, you know, take him for a walk in the neighborhood or whatever, do what you want for fun with him. But as far as
Yep. Yep.
putting him in rehab, right now the lunging is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the place to start. And then
Yep.
that should give you at least you got 2 to 4 weeks of lunging before he's going to have to be on the long reins. So that gives you time to kind of
Okay.
read through the lesson on the long
Yes.
reins. And then if we
Mm-hmm.
need to get together for that, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting right away, when you put him out on the lunge line, start every session letting him just walk for 5 minutes minimum.
Okay.
Okay. And within the
Yep.
first
Yep.
5 minutes, then let him figure out where he belongs between the donut hole and the edge of the donut.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
try to use, and this will help with horses that tend to be a little on the snarky defensive side rather than the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety defensive side. The less you use the whip, the better.
Yes. Yeah, he
A-
gets very cranky. Yeah, if I use
And
it.
and typically, and I see this in him, he's kind of a thinker. And
Yes.
so the way you can work with that is let him make as many mistakes as he wants to make and really keep your corrections very specific and very few. Because
Yep. Okay.
the more you let him use his brain, he obviously feels really pretty safe. I think he's going to get aggravated if you try to tell him how to do his job.
Yes.
So, so like what
Yep.
you're saying, nagging or just frequent aids are going to make him cranky.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
think of the lunging like if you're not running me over, do what you want.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I like that.
And then when you play with transitions, after 5 minutes of walking, you're going to push him into trot and then you're going to
Mm-hmm.
set the whip down.
Yep.
And he's going to trot as many strides as he wants, as fast or as slow as he wants, and you're going to wait for him to break gait before you lift the whip again.
Okay. Yep. So he's allowed to come back to walk, and then I'll ask him back up to trot slowly from there.
Yes. So
Yep.
when you're in the walk phase, the first 5 minutes, he's
Yep.
allowed to halt and you don't lift the whip unless he halts. As
Yes.
long as
Okay.
he's walking, leave him alone. If he halts,
Yep.
lift the whip until you get the walk and then put the whip down. And then when you're ready to
Yep.
work on, I call it, when I say I'm working on trot, what I really mean is I'm working on walk trot transitions. So
Yes.
I would do that for a minimum of 15 to 20 minutes on
Yep.
one direction. And then when you change direction, I would repeat the 5 minutes of walk and the 15,
Yep.
20 minutes of walk trot.
Okay. Yep.
And and let's just
Yep.
let the
Okay.
canter keep the canter out of the picture for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. That's good. Yep. How
So
many days a week do you think?
um the more the better. Yeah, the more the better because
Okay. Okay.
he's he with the work you've done, he potentially could make this change very quickly. He's definitely fit enough. You're not going to be pushing him. He's not, he's a little heavy on his left front, so I suspect he's a left-handed horse, what we call left-handed horse.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing that's going to make him lame by, and that's another reason I always, when I lunge or even use the long reins, my job is to request the upward transition, and I make it the
Yep.
horse's job to choose the downward transition.
Yes. Yep.
And and so if the horse, like right now, if this were his choice, he's maintaining the trot for a lap or two. He's exploring his balance while he's in trot. He's not breaking
Mm-hmm.
to the walk very quickly. So I might give him a lap or two of walk when he breaks to walk.
Yes. Okay.
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 And
Yep.
if he goes, oh, I can walk when I want, and he suddenly only gives you 2 strides of trot or a quarter of a circle of
Yes.
the trot, then you play that game
Yep.
with him by still letting him break to walk, but you ask for
Yep.
the trot transition more frequently.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
So if they
Yep.
put in a good effort at the trot, you let him have a break at the walk for a lap or so.
Yes.
And if
Yep.
they don't put any effort into the trot, then you let them break, but you only need a few strides of walk before you ask for the trot again.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
But the transitions are the key to the engagement and the use of his back and hindquarters muscles that he needs. So the more
Okay.
transitions that he's actually doing, the faster he's going to strengthen up.
Okay. Brilliant. Rather than him trotting around for 15 minutes without going back into walk. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's actually,
Yep.
and that's part of the reason I let them choose the downward transition is when a horse loses their balance in a faster speed, the most natural thing for them to do is slow down in order to find stability again. And that's what you're
Yep.
really encouraging. So if he
Okay.
feels unstable in the walk and he chooses the halt, then
Yep.
walk, halt, those first 5 minutes is just as
Mm-hmm.
valuable as
Mm-hmm.
walk, trot the rest of the time.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And it's ironically on the downward transition is when you increase the engagement of the hindquarter. The upward
Oh,
transition,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just explain it quickly because this will be key to kind of what you want to watch on the lunge line as well as the long reins.
Yep.
So, oh, hang on, let me try to time almost. I'm watching the left hind. Dang it, I keep missing it. There. So when the left hind is striding forward, same with
Mm-hmm.
now the left front, the leg
Yep.
strides forward, and when the hoof hits the ground, it's in what's called the braking phase of the stride. That's true for all 4 legs. So what,
Mm-hmm.
and it's spelled brake, like brakes in your car.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So what that means is when the hoof hits the ground, it begins a resistant phase of use. So it's resisting the force of acceleration, just like the brakes in your car, and it's
Mm-hmm.
resisting their own body weight from falling forward to their front legs, right?
Okay.
So the braking phase, it's actually the whole braking mechanism. It's so confusing the way the scientific terms work out because there's a braking phase of every stride, but there's also a braking use of the back muscle and the hindquarter muscles. Same thing, it's kind of related. But when the hind leg goes forward towards the center of the body, that's the beginning of the braking phase of the stride. So it's a deceleration use.
Can you say that a little bit again?
Mhm.
It's
So when the
it's the
hind leg Let me see if
Yep.
I can. So right where it's landed, the hoof is in the
Yep.
ground. What the
Yep.
leg is doing right now is resisting forward acceleration and body weight,
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yep.
right?
Uh-huh.
Then very quickly, I'll see if I can pause this quickly. Oh, I already missed it. That's how fast it is. Okay. So it went through peak vertical, where the leg transitions from
Yes.
braking into pushing,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So where this same hind leg is now is at the end of the pushing phase, and that hoof, let me move us a little bit. The left hoof is just coming off the ground.
Yes.
So he's created a forward thrust with the left hind
Yep.
leg, right?
Yep.
So the leg is now going to bend and straighten and go forward
Yep.
and land. So
Yep.
this is the very end of the pushing phase of the stride. Let me see if I can blink
Yep.
this. Oop, got it. Nailed it. So you saw the leg go through the swing, then the left hind
Yep.
leg just landed. That's the beginning of the braking phase, right?
Right. Okay. I getcha. Yep. Yep.
So it
Yep.
breaks. So the other hind leg is pushing, this leg is braking, and it goes back and forth like
Yep.
that. So for every
Yep.
push, the opposite hind leg is resisting the push so that they don't fall on their
Yes.
nose.
Yes. Okay.
So you feel it in
Yep.
your body when you go down a flight of stairs.
Yeah. And
The
you're
f-
having to keep your balance with.
so
Yep.
the foot that goes first and lands on the next lowest stair, your whole body is resisting you falling forward with that foot while your other foot comes through the air,
Yep. Yep.
right?
And as they slow down in gait, is it more engagement because there's more weight
There's
as
more
they're going into
time.
the ground?
There's more time, right?
Yep.
So the way he was probably trained, and this is very typical of any dressage work in modern times right now, is people
Yep.
believe the faster the horse goes, the more they lift the back. And when
Mm-hmm.
you actually understand the pushing and braking use of the body, the way
Mm-hmm.
they lift their back is it has to be equal, not more one than
Yep.
the other, right?
Okay. Yep.
So part of his disengagement is not a crossing of the hind legs laterally. It's his leg is always in the pushing phase longer than it's in the braking phase.
Ah, okay. Yeah, okay.
So his
Yeah.
posture is putting his hind legs always too far back from his center.
Yeah.
Does that
Yep.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yep.
So if we look at sort of this hind leg at the end of the pushing phase and this hind leg in the beginning of the braking phase, it's not very engaged. It could be
Mhm.
a little deeper placement, right?
Yep.
But in order to do that, the easiest way to do that is not to increase speed, because every time you increase speed, you're asking the horse to use more pushing muscles, more
Hmm.
pushing phase, right?
Okay. Yep.
So this is the main reason I allow the horse to always choose a full downward transition before I push again. Because when the horse's brain decides to slow the body, not because we cut
Yep.
the motion,
Yep.
then the horse naturally breaks better, which is going to
Yeah.
improve engagement.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
So he's going to do it in the most comfortable way possible, which means he's going to engage his hind legs as best as he can every time he wants to choose a downward transition.
Hmm.
That's the main reason the transitions are a welcome part of training. They are not a problem.
Yep. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So if he kind of gets cheeky and he only gives you 2, 3 strides of trot and goes, "Oh, I don't want to trot," then
Yes.
you only need a stride or two of the walk to be fair
Yes.
and ask him back up, right? So,
Yes.
but
Yep. Yep.
if he puts a good effort into the trot, then you kind of let him walk and
Yep.
catch his breath and
Yep.
restabilize. No big deal, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
let me
Okay, that's good.
see.
Yep.
So do you see how that action is working? Like the hind leg comes
Yes.
here, this one is pushing. So while this
Hmm.
is
Yep.
creating a forward thrust that goes through the pelvis and through the spine and ideally should go straight out and forward, if
Hmm.
they're not resisting their own body weight and the push is exceeding the brake, then they literally push themselves forward onto their own front end.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Or they become unstable and they have to resort into the posture of extension to gain stability,
Yes.
right?
Okay. Yep. So basically, what we'll be doing is strengthening up his whole back end.
And every time, so if we look again quickly at the posture, he doesn't go in, that's not an obvious version of extension. That's like a mild, subtle version, but it means the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Yeah.
There,
Yep.
that is where he fully changes the use of the spine. And for
Yes.
right now, anything other than nose in the sand is a sneaky version of extension. Just put that in your mind
Okay.
for now, right?
Okay. So we look for nose in the sand at the moment.
Yeah, because
Yep.
eventually we do want that basic balance posture of long and level. But right
Hmm.
now, that's not what he's doing. What he's doing is the last few degrees of pushing the spine down. When he
Yep.
looks long and level, he hasn't fully come out of extension. When he puts
Okay.
his nose in the dirt right now, that's not his ultimate posture. It's just
No.
the opposite body use from what he's been doing. And so
Yep.
he maybe needs a month of that or so, and then his muscles will have adapted, his legs will be better, and then we you can move on. But right
Yep.
now, the priority is sort of that nose in the sand, long and low, walk and
Hmm.
trot, both
Yep.
directions. Some days
Hmm.
you're going to find it's easier for him to gain that deeper posture in trot, other days at the walk. It,
Okay.
it doesn't, it's going to keep changing as his body changes. And
Yep.
so you're always looking for the path of least resistance to the best change possible. So even though I
Yep.
gave you a recipe, I said 5 minutes of walk, 20 minutes walk and trot, he could make
Yep.
a liar out of me tomorrow and decide he's not going to go into long and low at trot and he's only going to do it at the walk. And I would adjust
Okay.
accordingly.
Yeah. So if he was going around long and low in the walk, I would just leave him doing that. I
You
wouldn't be
could,
asking him for trot at the moment.
you have
Okay.
the option. You have the
Okay.
option to leave it alone. And
Yep.
if he's going into trot and getting more resistant, getting more high-headed, then I would choose that option. If
Yes.
I if I
Yeah. Okay.
could if I could get the same deep, long, and low in walk and trot, I'm going to strengthen the
Yep.
muscles a little bit more.
Okay. Okay.
So that would
Yep.
be even better. But
Yes.
what you'll find is certain days that's possible and other days that's not possible.
Okay. Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And do you think, I mean, he doesn't do much running around in the paddock. Do you think I need to build his fitness up, or he'll be fine to do 15 minutes trotting?
As long as you're letting him break from the trot,
Yep. Yep.
then
Oh,
if, he'll start to tell you if he gets tired, he'll
uh-huh.
start resisting the trot more and more, and you will lose the long and low posture. He will go back into extension when he gets fatigued.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if he's not going back into extension and he's staying long, then he's fit
Yep.
enough to work on it.
Okay,
Um,
good to know.
so
So just keep an eye on that.
yeah, so like I said, if he gets really fatigued using new muscles, he'll revert back into that posture of extension. All horses have to because it's the way they stabilize their body when they can't
Yeah.
move better,
Okay.
right? And
All right.
and
Yeah.
he might test you a bit more, he might get cranky. The one thing I would do with him is you will never hurt him walking him for a full hour 7 days a week. That will never harm him. It
Okay.
will only benefit him. So the trot and the canter
Mhm.
work we can
Yeah.
overdo,
Yeah.
but they're meant to walk 25 miles a day, and he's not
Yeah.
walking at 25 miles an hour. So
Half a
you know,
mile.
yeah.
No. Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
cannot,
It doesn't do a whole lot.
yeah. And that's part of his crankiness. And so it's a catch 22 because the more uncomfortable they get, the less they move, and the less they move, the more uncomfortable they get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to kind of be his coach, his personal trainer, his group support person who says, "Nope, we're going for our walk today." Right?
Okay.
We're going
Yep.
for our walk. You don't have to trot, but you need to move. And what you'll
Yeah.
find is if you really have a good program, at least 5 days a week for an hour, his
Mm-hmm.
whole demeanor will change first.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
The
It's been
first
a road.
thing, and that to me is always the sign that I'm kind of on the right track with the horse's training level and balance and challenge, is
Mm-hmm.
the behavior changes first. Like
Yeah.
you got to work through the shenanigans and the I don't want tos, but
Yeah.
when you stay with it within a week or two of a regular program, the first thing I
Mm-hmm.
find that changes is they get very soft, very calm. They look forward to the work. That's part of
Yeah.
how you
Yeah.
know you're on the right track.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I would just let him guide you. If he's walking like this and he doesn't come out of that neck use in 5 minutes, and then you bump him to trot and he starts to explore more length, I would say
Mm-hmm.
the trot is more beneficial than the walk, so I would do more of
Okay.
it.
Yep. Yep.
So that's kind of what you're looking at. You're letting him guide you day by day, but
Mm-hmm.
you go, okay, we're now on our walking program. This is
Yep.
And the
Yep.
only reason I said do it on a lunge line instead of hand walking is because this guy, he wants to figure it out for himself. He's a don't tell
Yeah.
me what to do horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to walk him, and if you get too close, you just get nipped because he
Yeah.
gets quite. It's like, get out of my space.
No, he's
Yeah.
already decided that humans are far less intelligent than horses in general. And so you just have to kind of let him do him for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. He's a funny boy.
yeah, but what you'll find is when he realizes that you're not going to tell him how to do it. And when you give him an aid, it has a very specific purpose. It's quick, it's temporary, and the rest is up to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Mm-hmm.
going to feel like you're listening to him. He's going to feel like
Yeah.
you're trusting his intelligence. And that's very important to a horse like him, even if he makes a million mistakes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
before you go into the guided work with the long reins, I think he needs about a month of this to
Mm-hmm.
realize that you're allowing him. You're not trying to tell him what to do. You're trying to support him to figure out how to get more comfortable in his forward motion,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that will create a really strong amount of trust before you get into the long reins where you are going to give more aids.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think, and this is a super safe exercise, the way we're doing it. What gets
Mm-hmm.
dangerous on the lunge line is when we decide we know what speed they should move better than letting them choose it.
Mm-hmm.
We can literally push them out of balance.
Yeah, I've had a few. In fact, when you suggested lunging, I went a bit of a
Yeah.
scary moment because I've had I've had some pretty big doozies on lunge lines, and I think it's because of that. I've pushed them too fast, and they've not been balanced, and both of my horses have done the same, and they will just explode, and they end up bucking and going crazy, or like pretending to spook, but come right in at me,
Yeah.
and it's been terrifying. So,
Yes.
anywho, I'm sure this is much more manageable, and I won't be pushing them
No,
to
and
that
that's why
again.
do pay attention to your inner donut
Yes,
space. Like
yes. So the
if
end of my hard bit of my lunge line is my little donut circle,
yep.
and he can't come in there. Yep.
And
Okay. But
if
anything
you
other than that,
yes, and anytime a horse buzzes the tower, so to speak, coming in,
yes,
my rule
yes.
of thumb is if I can touch you with the whip, I will.
And like just touch or touch.
It depends on how much they're
Okay.
testing you.
Yeah, because
Like,
yeah, this is
but
what I'm
do
thinking.
take it seriously. And
Yeah,
if you want, you can even use the whole lash of the lunge whip. That's part
yep,
of the reason we use such a long whip is I won't try to hurt the horse, but I'll let them know I can touch them from quite a distance. So
yeah,
even if I touch with the end of the lash, just
yeah,
gently, if I can
yeah,
reach them without effort, then I can double the size of my donut hole.
yeah, yeah,
And
okay.
I don't think he's going to try anything because we're going to keep
No,
it slow.
yeah, that's it. I think it's going to be quite, well, fingers crossed, it's going to be quite, um, he's going to be quite accepting of it. But when we go around to the right, he does, I don't know if you heard me when I was talking, but I said to my daughter, she was recording at the time, I said, I'm not going to ask him to canter because I could see he wasn't balanced anyway. And he threatens a little bit on the right, like he'll turn in at me, like he'll arch his neck sometimes and like turn in as if I'm going to have a bit of a go. Now, if he does that and he does come at me a little bit, I mean, how I just need to get as big as I need to get, I suppose, don't I?
The way I think of it, because I think this is a problem for most of us women, especially, is that
Yeah.
we don't tend to set boundaries until we're scared or mad or really
Mm,
upset.
yeah.
And what I've learned, especially with horses that have really made my knees shake and really been scary, what horses
Mm-hmm.
understand, and think of it this way, what he wants to know from you is that you're good enough to protect yourself.
Okay.
So all
Yeah.
horses, even the most dangerously aggressive horses I've worked with, I can use the whip or a tool and even get firm, but in my mind, which is controlling my energy, I
Mm-hmm.
always take the point of view, I have the right to defend myself from you. It's not about you.
Yeah.
This is about
Yeah.
me, right?
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
then your instincts will kick in and you're going to know how fast, how hard, what you need to do to protect yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
And no horse, even the most aggressive horses, I might have had to repeat that 3 times at the most when horses charged me, but I
Mm-hmm.
go, I've got this tool in order to defend myself, not to
Yeah.
punish or control you,
Yeah. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he does charge for any reason, it's like I go straight to their head and it's like, not here, buddy. Like you can go
Yeah. Okay.
anywhere you want except here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And the
Yeah.
horses really understand that because, what we see in the horse world is so much aggressiveness and show him who's
Yeah.
boss and you have to be
Yeah.
dominant and all that. And
Yeah.
when the horse charges us, it's fear-based. So
Mm.
punishing them only makes them more afraid.
Yeah.
They're actually
Yeah.
becoming aggressive out of fear, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So all you ever want to do is use your tools to protect yourself while he's lost his ever-loving mind, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same way that if you had a big, strong man coming at you and you had something to defend yourself with, you would, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
the horse is sort of testing, are you a good enough horse that you can protect yourself from me?
Mm,
Because if you can't protect yourself from
mm,
him, then in his mind, he has to become the protector of you. That's it. If you're in the
yes.
herd,
Yeah. Okay.
if you can't protect yourself
Yes.
from him, he has to protect you, which means you have to listen to him.
Yeah. 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 That makes so much sense. Yep.
Yeah. And if you can protect yourself from him when he tests you, it's just a test because he
Yeah.
obviously, it's just a test. He's not
Yeah. Yeah.
terrified of you. But when you prove, I will protect myself from you, then they
Uh-huh. Yeah.
actually relax because they go, oh, good, I don't have to worry about you.
Yeah. And this is the circle we've been going through
Yeah.
for a while. Yeah.
So
With my
whether,
other horse as well, funny.
and the closer, because he needs to kind of be moving more to work through his issues. And I have a sense he's kind of frustrated that he's made his way out of
Mm,
his old problem a really good
mm,
way, but he hasn't
mm,
yet found really a comfortable way of moving. And so
mm.
when you're close to him, he distracts himself almost by sort of testing
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
when you get him out into his own space, he can just think about himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
use the full length of a lunge whip just to say, hey, just be out there for now. You don't need to come in
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
even will take the whip and sort of put it around my body like I'm building an invisible shield, and I'm not even pointing it at the
Okay.
horse. I just sort of go, don't stick your nose in the fan, right? Just kind of
Yeah.
go around yourself. And all you're
Yeah.
doing is defining the space where you protect yourself. That's it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And I'm a sucker for well, loving on him.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if he then tries to creep in, like for instance, at the end of that lunge session, he was in a really good mood.
Yeah.
It, seemed to really like it. And he stops and he's had a little nice look on his face, and then he just starts to creep in, creep in, creep in, and I let him, and then he nibbles. So it's like I get caught in that I want to love on him and let him in my space. And I get a bit confused sometimes as when should I say, no, this, maybe I just need to be in the space of it at the moment.
No,
You
just
stay
watch
out there.
watch the eyes. Watch the eyes and watch
Yeah.
the ears.
Okay.
Just and they can
Yeah.
change point, point, point like that fast, right? That's what
Yes.
catches us off guard is if we're not paying attention,
Yeah.
then what he's doing, because the sharing space is in the horse world reserved for trusted herd members. And
Mm.
so if he's not confident, which is why he pushes on you, because
Yes.
he needs to know you can protect yourself for him to gain confidence. It's kind of
Yeah.
ironic, but that's just the way they do
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's going to sort of go, oh, yeah, I think you're a trusted herd member. Let's share space. Let's graze together, nose to nose, or groom each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes, oh, I'm not sure. And he'll
Yeah. That's
instantly,
exactly what he does.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you notice, then what you're doing is saying, we can be friends when your energy is right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be a mutually respectful friendship, right?
Yes.
But but if you're going to test me, you can just go back in your own space. You don't belong in my space when you're like that. You can just go,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. You can just go
And
into the
could
other room.
Yes. Go back out there.
Yeah.
And then when you're pushing him back out there, how would you do that? Do you do it quite forcefully, or is it just a backing up of the lead rope, quite gentle?
I actually don't use a cue at all because I don't want the cues to be associated with that dynamic. So what I
Okay.
do is I take the tail end of the lead rope or my arms, or I do jumping
Yep.
jacks, or I do something shocking and unexpected to suddenly
Yep.
take up more space. So
Okay.
if you think of he has a personal space bubble, you have a personal space bubble, but space is
Yep.
free. We get as much as we want,
Yep.
right? So sharing space is a privilege for
Mm-hmm.
trusted herd members, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
if he takes advantage of that, you go, "Oh, I need more room." And you don't even look at him. You just go, "I need more room. I need more room."
Okay.
I might, you could have a whip in your hand, you could have a lead rope in your hand, you could just do
Yep.
jumping jacks and flail around. And he goes, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
I
doesn't
love
take
it. Yeah.
much, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that way you're not making it like a correction because
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
like
Yeah.
that almost changes our energy and what
Mm,
they're communicating with us through energy more than action,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Because
if
I've
I
really struggled with I've really struggled with that because in the past I've known that obviously I need to get him out of my space because he's gone into nippy mode again. And I've backed him up or tried to push him and he's like snarling at me and he's gone from lovey-dovey to snarly and then it gets worse.
yes.
So
The other
okay,
thing
that
too
okay,
is
that's good.
is backing up with what we talked about with the dropped fetlocks. Going backwards for him is going to be very hard. And so if you're trying,
Okay.
it's physically hard. So he's going to get more defensive,
Right.
right? If I
Yeah,
just
okay. Yep.
if I just suddenly need double the amount of personal space that I had 1 second ago,
Yep.
then it's like he goes, "That lady's a little crazy. I better pay attention to how much space she needs." But he has the freedom to go anywhere 360 degrees around your bubble.
Okay.
So
Yep.
he can do
Yep.
it in whatever way suits him.
Okay. Yeah. A license to be
Yeah.
crazy. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Brilliant.
it really because it's not even when we focus our eyes on them, there's an intensity there that they can take
Mm.
personally.
Yes.
Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's one
Yep.
of the things with
He
humans is,
does.
yeah, we go into that sort of predator visual, what do you call it? Uh, Focal vision,
Mm.
right? Where
Yep.
horses
Yep.
work, they work in peripheral vision. And so when he's coming
Yes.
into your space, what he will understand is a peripheral move. So you're saying,
Okay.
"I need a bigger bubble," right?
Yeah.
But it's a
Yeah.
360-degree bubble around your whole body, and you don't care where he is as long as he's not in there.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yep.
so he can do it, but that way you're not directing energy at him and setting up this sort of action reaction game. And
Yes.
you're not maybe inadvertently choosing a strategy like backing up that actually is creating more discomfort.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's good advice.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so like a horse coming to bite another horse in the pasture, they give
Yep.
lots of warning. And if the other horse
Mm.
doesn't move, they're going to make contact, right?
Yep.
And that other
Yep.
horse can move away anywhere. It's not a cue. It's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a get the hell out of my way.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
and I think you'll feel more comfortable doing that too, because
Yeah.
it's not about him, it's about you.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my space. Okay. Yeah. That that's good because we've ended up just in arguments
Yeah.
where you know, I think, oh, he's being all nice with me, and then next minute he's nipping at me. So I just, yeah, I get quite frustrated with the whole thing. So no, that's good to know.
No, that's my
Own my
favorite.
space.
My favorite Australian term is argy bargy, and it's exactly
Argy
that.
bargy.
Argy bargy.
He is an argy bargy. Yeah, I love it. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay. So I have this
brilliant.
recorded. Let me stop the recording really quick.